I remember the exact moment my life changed forever. It was a Monday morning, the kind where the sun seems almost hesitant to climb into the sky. I was on my knees beside my bed, hands clasped tight, eyes closed in prayer just like any other morning. But this day was different. This day the veil between worlds parted, and what I saw changed everything I knew. Before we continue, please let me know where you're listening from. It would be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like. It will help this video to reach so many people who need to listen to this testimony, and leave a comment. Share your thoughts about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other here on this channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more of this content coming your way. Enjoy listening. My name is Angela Rivera. I'm 34 years old, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person who has visions. I work as a nurse at Memorial Hospital, deal with practical things, blood pressure readings, medication schedules, comforting words for the scared and hurting. I've always believed in God, attended church regularly, said my prayers, but I never expected him to speak back to me so directly. It started with a warmth, gentle at first, like standing near a heater on a cold day. Then it grew, spreading through my chest, down my arms, until my entire body felt wrapped in a golden glow. When I opened my eyes, my bedroom was gone. I stood in a vast open space, not empty, but filled with light that seemed alive, moving and shifting in patterns I couldn't quite follow. And there, standing before me, was a figure so radiant I could barely look at him. I knew immediately who he was, no introduction needed. My knees buckled, and I would have fallen if not for the steadying hand he placed on my shoulder. "Angela," he said, and my name in his voice sounded like music. "I have something to show you." His voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard, like thunder and a whisper simultaneously, powerful yet gentle enough not to shatter me. I trembled, unable to speak. "Do not be afraid," he continued, and somehow, miraculously, I wasn't anymore. "I have chosen you for a purpose. What I show you today, you must share with others." He gestured with his hand, and suddenly we were somewhere else, or perhaps the same place, but now I could see more of it. We stood on what seemed like a high vantage point, looking down upon countless human figures going about their daily lives. Some walked with a faint glow around them, while others moved in a kind of grayness, shadowy figures trailing behind or circling them. "What you see now is the world as it truly is," Jesus explained. "The physical and spiritual realms together. Those shadows are forces that seek to harm, to destroy, to separate my children from me and from their purpose." I watched in horror as the shadow creatures whispered into people's ears, placed obstacles in their paths, or simply weighed them down until their shoulders slumped and their steps dragged. "But watch this," he said, pointing to a modest house below us. Inside, a woman knelt in prayer. As she began to speak words I couldn't hear, something extraordinary happened. The words became visible, flowing from her mouth like golden light. As I squinted to see better, I recognized the familiar phrases of Psalm 91. "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty." With each word she spoke, the light around her grew brighter, forming a shield that expanded outward. The shadow creatures that had been lurking nearby shrieked and fled, unable to bear the radiance. "I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." The words spiraled upward, creating a dome of protection over her home. Inside this dome, everything seemed clearer, brighter, more real somehow. "Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence." As she continued, I saw figures appear, powerful beings of light that positioned themselves around her home, standing guard with swords of flame. "He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge." The woman's face reflected the peace of these words. Whatever burdens she carried seemed lighter now, and a small smile played on her lips, though tears still marked her cheeks. "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day." Jesus turned to me then, his eyes filled with compassion and purpose. "This is the power of my words spoken in faith. Psalm 91 is a shield, a fortress, a declaration of trust. When my children pray these words each morning, they are not merely reciting ancient text, they are activating protection in the spiritual realm. He waved his hand again, and we watched dozens of different scenes, people of all ages and backgrounds, in homes grand and humble, praying the same psalm. In each case I saw the same effects: light expanding, shadows retreating, angelic figures taking up positions of protection. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. My word has power beyond human understanding. Jesus continued, when spoken in faith, it changes things unseen but no less real. This psalm in particular declares truths that demons cannot stand against, that I am refuge, fortress, protector, that my faithfulness is a shield, that no evil can touch those who dwell in my shadow. I watched mesmerized as a businessman recited the psalm while driving to work. The words created a bubble of light around his car, and I saw accidents and delays diverted from his path. Not because he was more special than others, Jesus explained, but because his faith and obedience had activated specific promises. If you say, "The Lord is my refuge," and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. A mother prayed over her sleeping children, and I saw the words of the psalm form a blanket of protection over their beds, keeping nightmares and sickness at bay. A student recited it before an important exam, and clarity of mind descended like a gentle rain. An elderly man in a hospital bed whispered the words, and though his physical pain remained, peace settled over him like a warm embrace. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Do you see Angela? Jesus asked, his voice both gentle and urgent. This is available to all who believe, not as a magic spell or formula, but as a declaration of faith, a positioning of the heart and mind in alignment with spiritual truth. I nodded, overwhelmed by the implications of what I was seeing. There is a battle raging that most cannot see, he continued. My children walk through spiritual minefields daily, targeted by forces that seek to destroy, discourage, and derail. But they need not be defenseless. My word is both weapon and shield. He showed me more specifically what happens when someone prays Psalm 91 each morning. The words create a personal fortress that moves with them throughout the day. Angels are dispatched to guard their paths. Traps and snares become visible in the spiritual realm and can be avoided. Poison, both literal and metaphorical, loses its potency. Fear finds no foothold. They will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. This doesn't mean my children won't face trials, he clarified, seeming to read my thoughts. But it means they need never face them alone or unprotected. The psalm is a reminder of my presence, a declaration of my promises, an invitation for my protection. I watched as people who prayed the psalm faced the same challenges as others: illness, financial strain, relationship difficulties. But with a notable difference. They carried a light within them that the circumstances couldn't extinguish. They had access to wisdom and strength beyond their own resources, and most importantly, they were never alone in their struggles. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Jesus showed me how the Psalm's declaration of authority over evil forces manifested in the spiritual realm. Those who prayed it walked with a certain authority, and dark creatures scattered before them, unable to maintain their hold. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. This is key, Jesus explained. The protection comes because of relationship, not ritual. Those who know me, who acknowledge my name, who position themselves in love toward me, these are the ones who experience the fullness of these promises. I saw people calling out to God in times of distress and watched as heaven seemed to bend toward them in response. Not always with immediate solutions, but always with presence, never abandoned, never forgotten. He will call on me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. The words of the psalm, when prayed faithfully, seemed to create a direct line of communication, making prayers more effective, more powerful, not because the words themselves were magical, but because they aligned the heart with truth and opened the eyes of the spirit to see God's faithfulness. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. As the vision continued, Jesus explained that the final verses of the psalm were not merely about physical longevity, but about fullness of purpose. Those who dwelled in God's shelter lived lives of meaning and impact, regardless of their actual years, and experienced salvation in its complete sense: wholeness, healing, peace. Angela, Jesus said, turning to face me fully, "This is why I've shown you these things. Tell those who will listen." Psalm 91 is not just beautiful poetry, it is spiritual armor, a declaration of truth that reshapes reality. When prayed with understanding and faith each morning, it establishes protection that lasts throughout the day. He placed his hands on my shoulders, and his touch sent waves of purpose through me. There are many who struggle needlessly, who live in fear or fall prey to attacks they could have avoided. Share this with them, show them what I've shown you. But I stammered, finding my voice at last. Who will believe me? I'm just me, a nurse, not a preacher or teacher. His smile was like sunrise. That is precisely why I chose you. Your ordinary life will be the greatest testimony to the extraordinary power of my word. Begin with those around you. Show them by example. Pray the psalm faithfully each morning, and let them see the difference in your life. The vision began to fade, the light dimming around us, but his voice remained clear. Remember, Angela, the power is not in the speaking of the words alone, but in the faith behind them. Teach them to pray with understanding, with conviction, with relationship. This is not superstition, but supernatural reality. I will, I promised, meaning it with every fiber of my being. I blinked, and I was back in my bedroom, still on my knees beside my bed. Sunlight streamed through my curtains, and my alarm clock showed I'd been praying for almost an hour, though it had felt like minutes. My cheeks were wet with tears I didn't remember crying. That was 3 months ago. Since then I'd been doing exactly what Jesus asked. I pray Psalm 91 every morning, with new understanding of what these ancient words actually do in the spiritual realm. And I've been telling everyone who will listen. It started with my closest friend, Melissa. She'd been struggling with anxiety attacks for years, and nothing seemed to help. Not therapy, not medication, not even her faith, which had always been strong. When I told her about my vision, she was skeptical but desperate enough to try anything. "What do I have to lose?" she said with a shrug. A week later, she called me in tears. "Angela, something's different. I can't explain it. It's like the crushing weight is just gone. I still get anxious sometimes, but it's like there's a buffer now, a space between me and the panic. I can breathe again." Then there was my brother, Marcus, who'd been fighting addiction for most of his adult life, in and out of recovery, never quite able to stay clean. He was the hardest to convince, his faith long since abandoned. "Sure, sis," he'd said, rolling his eyes. "Magic words. Whatever you say." But he called me 2 weeks later. "I don't know if this is real or if I'm just desperate enough to believe it," he admitted. "But I've been saying that psalm every morning, and yesterday, I walked right past my dealer's corner and felt nothing, no pull, no craving. It was like some invisible shield was between us." Word spread through my church, my workplace, my neighborhood. Not everyone believed, of course. Some smiled politely and changed the subject. Others outright dismissed it as emotional religious nonsense. But those who tried it, who prayed the psalm faithfully each morning, they came back with stories. A mother whose child's chronic nightmares stopped completely. A man whose business was saved from bankruptcy through a last-minute contract. A teenager who found the courage to stand up to bullies. A woman whose cancer scans came back clear after months of dire prognosis. Not every story was dramatic. Sometimes it was just a new sense of peace, a clearer mind, a lighter heart, protection from accidents narrowly avoided, wisdom for decisions that proved wise in retrospect. I started a small group that meets weekly in my living room. We share testimonies, pray together, encourage one another to maintain the practice even when results aren't immediately visible. Some days now 15 of us gather, Ordinary people experiencing extraordinary protection. Last week something happened that confirmed everything. I was working night shift at the hospital, walking to my car at 2 a.m. in the nearly empty parking lot. As I reached for my keys, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Looking up, I saw two men approaching from between parked cars, their intentions clear in their stance, their hidden hands. Fear flashed through me for an instant before a strange calm took its place. I remembered the prayer I'd spoken that morning, really spoken, not just recited. The words came back to me. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. As the men drew closer, they suddenly stopped. Their eyes widened, looking not at me but just behind me. One backed away, tugging at his friend's sleeve. The other hesitated, then turned and ran. I stood frozen, keys in hand, as they disappeared around the corner of the parking garage. Only when I was safely in my car, with the doors locked, did I realize what had happened. They hadn't seen me, not just me. They had seen what I couldn't see, the protection around me, perhaps the very angels Jesus had shown me in my vision. I don't share this story for recognition or to claim special status. I share it because Jesus asked me to, because there are people suffering who don't need to be, fighting battles with weapons they don't know they have. If you're listening to this, know that this protection is available to you too, not because of me or my experience, but because God's promises are for all his children. Psalm 91 is not magic. It's relationship, it's trust, it's positioning yourself under the shadow of the Almighty and staying there. Try it. For 1 month, pray Psalm 91 every morning, not just reading the words, but understanding them, believing them, declaring them over your life. Watch what happens in your circumstances, in your heart, in your mind. Keep a journal if it helps. Note the changes, both dramatic and subtle, and then share your story, just as I've shared mine. Because in a world full of shadows and struggles, we need to know that protection is possible, that we are not alone in the battle, that prayers don't just disappear into the ceiling, but create ripples in realms we cannot see. The shield is real. The protection is available. The psalm works, not as a formula, but as a declaration of faith in the God who promised to be our refuge and fortress. He is waiting to be that for you too. All you need to do is dwell in his shelter, rest in his shadow, and speak his truth into each new day. The spiritual realm is listening, and so is he. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Thank you for listening to Testimony. If you have been inspired, please give this video a like and share to your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to become part of this community. If you have been praying Psalms, comment the testimonies you have received from it. It will encourage someone to also learn and apply. As you do that, may God bless you.